Hello, and welcome back. And welcome to the second part of the Business Masterclass. And I'm really pleased to see that Heinz and their team are here. You know, we talk about world-class brands. You can't get anything more world-class than Heinz. And I'm also really pleased to see the team from Tesco's. Wave Tesco's team. Again, another world-class great brand. And so thank you all for supporting and being part of this whole process. So this morning we talked about, strategy, thinking about some of the business challenges and what are the opportunities. We talked about PR, we talked about networks, and now we are talking about branding, marketing, sales, anything they're going to tell you themselves. But it's my pleasure to introduce Heinz.
Thank you. Great. Hello, everybody. And thank you to Carlton for introducing us. It's a real privilege for us to be here. We've been to the Manchester Masterclass in Birmingham, so we've had really great feedback on our content, and hoping that you'll enjoy this presentation and get some useful tips from us. We're going to kick off with some introductions, just of myself and the team that I have here to present to you. We're going to talk you through a bit about how we approach our customer meetings and what we do to prepare to talk to some of our supermarket customers. So, my name is Richard McEwen. I am the channel director for Tesco and Asda. So what do? I run the customer teams who look after those accounts for us. We sit in the sales team, and we spend a lot of time sort of talking with our multiple retailer customers and managing our commercial relationships with them. I'll hand over to the team to introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Wasim. Call me Waz. I'm a senior national account manager at Heinz. I look after the Tesco account, sitting at the back of the room. And I've been at Heinz for about 5 years, doing a variety of different roles. So I did a bit of finance, commercial finance, then did a function called category development, working with Sainsbury's, Waitrose and Co-op, and currently am in the sales team working with Rich.
Good afternoon. I am Vinay Solanki. I'm a sales finance analyst. I work in the Morrisons and Waitrose account. I've been at Heinz for about 2.5 years. I was previously in audit for about 6 months. And then I ended up at this amazing company, Heinz, and I've enjoyed every bit of it, to be honest. So, yeah.
I'm Sheridan. I'm an account manager. I've been with Heinz now for coming up to 5 years, actually. I started my career working on the Sainsbury's account for 2.5 years, and now I work within the wholesale independent part of the business for the last 2.5 years. So that's a little bit about me.
And I'm Kaya. I'm the social media and digital marketing executive. I started at Heinz about a year ago working in the international marketing sector. I was doing innovation and growth, and then I moved to social media and the digital marketing side, where I look after our social media channels, so Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, and I plan our social media content. So nice to meet everyone.
Cool. Nice.
Great. Thank you. As you may have noticed, I don't think we were prepared to be all standing on the stage together. This is a bit more professional than what we normally do. Hopefully we won't get in the way of the screen. We want this session to be interactive as well. So, please put your hands up if you have any questions. We want to hear from you. We've had some great opportunities to meet other entrepreneurs and stakeholders in some of these previous sessions and hear from them around their ideas and also what they're planning in the future. Please come and interact, and don't be afraid to ask questions as we move through the content. So, what are we going to talk to you about today? We'll give you a very short introduction to who we are and what we do. And then I'll just give you a bit of a landscape of how we operate in the market in the UK, what our main routes to market are and our primary customers. Because I think it's relevant when you're thinking about building a business in this industry to think about where to start. Because you may want to start small and scale, or you may want to start big if you think that is the right route to kick off. And then we'll talk to you, the team will come on and start to talk to you a bit around what's necessary to be retail ready. And we'll use probably the example of what kind of needs to be true to deal with a supermarket like Tesco, who are in the room, and I think they'll give you some more information on that later in the day. And as I say, then we've got some incredible talent here to talk to you about, like, how do we approach some of those meetings and those conversations with our customers. So we have some methodologies and some processes that we use to try and ensure that we use, when we get the time from the supermarkets, which is very valuable to them, that we use that time effectively and we make it very productive. And hopefully that will be insightful and informative to you. We'll talk a bit about how we use data to create compelling stories around our products. And then we'll kind of finish with some information from Vinay around how we manage our P&Ls from a commercial perspective, and hopefully that will be also useful for you. So yeah, sales and go-to-market. So who are we, Heinz? You may recognize, hopefully, some of our products. We are still, we're the #1 or #2 most loved brand in the United Kingdom, and we're present in 9 out of every 10 households in the UK. So quite a big brand, lots of legacy, lots of love for our brand in the UK, and we're really, really proud of what we do. I picked these 4 products to kind of show you kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis, because we're in a slightly different phase, let's say, with how we manage our portfolio. So you'll hopefully recognize the baked beans and ketchup, which are our biggest kind of core categories. And we're very highly penetrated, and we have a lot of loyalty and a lot of, let's say, consumer love for those products in particular. Mayonnaise is somewhere that we've seen a lot of growth. So this might resonate for you in some of your cycles, in the sense that we've penetrated the mayonnaise category and we've come as a challenger brand into that space, and we've grown quite considerably over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And we're now like maturing in that space and actually becoming kind of, in some cases, the number one brand in that category. And then lastly, we've recently launched pasta sauces. So part of our one of the challenges, let's say, that we face as an organization is that in beans and ketchup, the growth is quite hard to come by because we're quite mature, and those categories aren't growing at the rate that we would like, I suppose. And so then we need to look for adjacencies. And we use the kind of the sort of catchphrase almost like of where to play and how to win. So we look at like what are the market spaces that we can access and where do we have a right to play, and then how do we execute a great proposition to win in that space. And pasta sauces is now one of the, I think our pasta sauces, are the fastest growing brand in that space in the market. So that's who we are and what we do. And I just wanted to probably share with you a bit of detail around, as I say, what's the customer landscape that we operate within. So we have 2 primary channels, one which is away from home or food service, and we deal with a lot of different stakeholders in that space. And a lot of that is either back of house, where our products are used as ingredients or as part of a meal assembly, or front of house, where we would maybe have a bottle of ketchup or a bottle of mayonnaise on a table. We don't work in that space, and we're not really going to talk to you too much about that space now. So what we're going to talk to you about is kind of the packaged retail channel that we operate in. And that's where we deliver a kind of finished goods to market for a consumer to pick up in a store. In between those kind of 2 spaces is what we call wholesale and cash and carry, and we have kind of 3 primary customers in that space. So these operators will buy product from us, and then they'll probably sell it again onto another business, rather than being direct to consumer. So you've got Booker, Best Way, and Costco. Booker is obviously owned by Tesco, and what they do for us is they essentially fulfill to, let's say, the end user, which is a bit more fragmented and doesn't operate at scale. Then we have probably what is the biggest part of our business, makes up roughly, I would say, 90% of the turnover for our business unit, so UK and Northern Europe, sorry. And this is the multiple retailers. So we subcategorize them a little bit by channel. So you have the malts, which are Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Asda, and Waitrose, which are obviously significant scale retailers. I think we sell roughly around £300 million worth of Heinz products through Tesco every year. And these make up, again, like a very large proportion of the revenue that we generate in the UK. We then have the Co-op, which are specifically a convenience retailer, and so they operate in a slightly different way as well. They have a smaller range, they have many more stores, and we have a slightly different trading relationship with them. We also deal with Aldi and Lidl, who are primarily private label operators, but are now kind of moving into the branded space. And we sell to the likes of B&M and Home Bargains, who again are kind of what we would call a high street discounter. And they tend to buy branded goods and sell them at lower margins. The reason why we wanted to share this landscape with you is that it's, if you wanted to enter into the market in the likes of a Tesco, for example, it's a huge scale operation, and you need to be really ready to operate with a customer like that. So it might be right for your business to choose a smaller route to market where you don't have to operate at that level of scale. So it's just a bit of an illustration. And what we actually do in some space, we operate with a pure play e-commerce retailers, so Ocado and Amazon, and we do test and learn with them in some cases. So pasta sauces is a great example whereby with Ocado, we were able to essentially, in a very kind of low friction way, get that product in front of consumers to test and see if they would respond to that. And it takes much lower commitments because you don't have to then put a physical product in, let's say 1,000 stores, which is a significant enterprise. So yeah, there's a bit about what we do and who we deal with. And I thought it would be useful, and I think Tesco will talk to this a little bit more later on in the day, but just to give you a bit of insight. I actually used to work for Tesco. I didn't mention that in my introduction, but I worked for Tesco for 7 years, and I think it's quite pertinent just to kind of give an overview around like what do you need to deal with an operator like Tesco. So these are the kind of hygiene factors around what needs to be in place. So first of all, you need traceable supply chains. You need to be able to kind of like check and see where all of your product is coming from, and be able to give confidence to a business like Tesco that that you don't have any risk, reputational risk, built into your supply chains. You need to have scalable capacity, as I say. We recently, I'm going to forget the number here, but we recently launched a WIGIG with Tesco on what we call barbecue. So it's basically a Barbie-themed barbecue sauce, believe it or not. And it went into a huge number of stores, and I think we sold 130,000 cases in the first week or something like that. So it's just a bit of a, like, if something goes into a store in Tesco and it works, you can sell huge amounts of volume in a very short space of time. And you need to be able to kind of manage that and manage it consistently, because the number one thing for Tesco or any other retailer is availability. The product has to be available on shelf for a customer when they choose to purchase it. The third thing is around EDI functionality. That's just a given. So you have to have the ability to operate with a Tesco on an electronic ordering and invoicing system, and that's something just worth thinking about. And you have to be able to deliver on national distribution. There are Tesco distribution centres all across the UK, and so you have to have that set up to make sure that you can service their demand. And finally, just making sure that you're solvent and legal. So when you are set up as a Tesco supplier, and they'll probably talk to you about this a little bit later on in the day, you have to have like all of the checks and balances in place to ensure that that you are able to trade with them, and that's all going to be going to work in an appropriate fashion. And lastly, is just making sure that you're trained on Tesco system. Tesco have a fantastic kind of now client-facing or supplier-facing system whereby you can learn about how to administrate their business. So it's worth kind of genning up on that and ensuring that you know how to operate in their space. So these are the kind of key points I think it's useful just to set out in terms of the landscape when you're thinking about operating with a customer like Tesco or any other supermarket, and just making sure that you've ticked off these hygiene factors as you look to enter into that space. So you've done all of that. You're ready to go, and my team are now going to talk you through what we do next when we come to those buyer-facing conversations. So I'll hand over to Waz and Sheridan.
So yeah, Waz and I in the next section are going to take you through the steps that we take when we're about to go to a retailer. So first of all, we want to start off by understanding where everyone here is on their journey. So who has a product? Okay, quite a few.
Quite a few people, yeah. Anyone have anything listed in a retailer? Nice.
Okay, exciting.
And who wants to get something listed in a retailer? That's pretty much the whole room then.
Yes. Be more intentional, yeah. Cool. So yeah, in the next section, we're going to take you through.
Yeah.
We're going to take you through like how we sell as a business. So to start off, we're going to talk about the first step. Before we even think about talking to a retailer, what do we do? And that's the longest part. We probably start this, I was asking around, like how long before we present a new product to a retailer do we actually start planning? The consensus is about 3 months. So that's from the marketing teams, the research, everything that goes into it. Waz is going to expand a lot more on those elements, but that's essentially the prep before the meeting. The second section is all going to be about the pitch. So when you're in that room, how do we structure the meeting to make sure that we're going to get the most use out of the time? And I'm going to take you through the steps that I go through when I'm going to build the conversation. And I also use it in emails and stuff to make sure that I'm actually getting to the point and covering all the steps that I need to cover. And the last point is about after the meeting. How do we maintain the listing? How do we use data and insight to essentially make sure that we have the listing going forward? And then for Kraft Heinz, there's 2 elements that underpin everything that we do. The first one is about relationship that we have. At the end of the day, we're working with people, and that's what we manage as well. We want to make sure that we're going to get the best out of the relationship so we can get the best out of the products and the listings. And the second point is about using data to drive the best decision making. So we're going to talk about that. Essentially underpins everything that we talk about. I might not talk about it directly, but it's just 2 things to always keep in mind in everything we go through. Cool.
Brilliant. So thanks, Sheridan. So we've got 3 sections. So I'm going to start a little bit. So when we're prepping before those meetings, what are our customers looking for? So you can really divide it into, I've tried to simplify here, but if you're looking at product and then the performance. So when you're looking at product, the main points, what is the point of difference of your product? How is it differentiated from the products that are already in the category? So as Sheridan was saying, 3 months prior, longer than that, when we've actually sort of created a product, we're always thinking about how is this going to fit into the existing portfolio, what competitors are there, what's the dynamics of the category, is the category growing, declining? So all this we would already have in our head, and we would understand where our product is going to sit in that. The second point is shopper appeal and how trendy it is. So with food, where we typically play, food obviously is, there's trends up and down, especially with the likes of TikTok now. Things come and go, things come into fashion. For example, there was a huge pickle trend on TikTok recently. We responded by launching a pickle ketchup, which is now available in all good retailers. And then Richard mentioned another one as well, barbecue. So obviously Barbie was huge last year when that movie was released. So how could we? So we reached out to Mattel, who make Barbie, and then sort of got this product out exclusively available at Tesco for the next 2 weeks. So go and get yourself a bottle. But yeah, so things like that. So how can you stay relevant as well in a category which is generally quite stable? And then shopper need state. So what do I mean by that? So if you look at our portfolio, and the example I like to use is beans. Beans is a single product, but we sell that product in several different formats. We have 200-gram cans, we have the 415-gram cans, we have snap pots, and we have a fridge pack. Why do we do that? It's because it's satisfying a very different need state in different shoppers. The snap pot is very much tailored to people who are busy, want convenience, don't mind paying a bit extra for the format, but can chuck it in the microwave, no bowls to wash up afterwards, pour it straight on your baked potato or toast, and it goes in the bin or in the recycling, and it's done. 200-gram cans might be useful for someone who's living by themselves, a student perhaps, and then the fridge pack, for example, tailors towards families who are going through a lot of beans. There's 4 people having that repeatedly. So that's quite important to understand as well, is that once you've got your product, like how can you sort of diversify it, not by changing the product itself, but different formats as well. And the last 2, I think, which are becoming increasingly more important, sustainability and recyclable packaging. So I look after Tesco, and I know for Tesco that is one of their sort of key things that they look for. I'm sure they'll mention that later as well, but that is a baseline that we look at as well. So when we're creating products, how are we already thinking about the packaging that's going to go in? How is that going to impact the environment, and staying one step ahead of the game? And the last one as well, so this one obviously more sort of linked to food, but doesn't necessarily just apply for food, but health conscious. People are becoming very aware of what's in their foods, and there's also been some legislation like the high fat, salt, sugar legislation, which is cutting and changing how supermarkets can display foods which are high in fat, salt and sugar. So whilst it doesn't affect the categories that we play in, we still need to be aware of this legislation, and in the future that could also impact us. So how does upcoming legislation affect the products that you are looking to get listed as well? It's quite a good thing to keep in mind. And then on performance. So performance is obviously very, very important. So the other thing that we'll be thinking about is, once you've got an idea of your product and where it sits, is how is it going to perform? So number one, velocity, rate of sale. Your category that you're going to be playing in will have products that already sell there, and they will have a sell-through rate. So having an understanding of that, and we'll go into talking about where you can get this data from, but looking at that data and understanding where your product's going to sit in that is going to give the buyer or the retailer that you're talking to confidence that your product is worthy of listing. The second point is incrementality, category growth. So the example here is, if you're listing your product in a category, and you're simply going to cannibalize the sales of another competitor, from a retailer perspective, that's not accretive or beneficial to their category. So take an example of take an example of the ketchup category. Another competitor comes in, launches a product which just takes sales away from Heinz. The category overall stays the same size. The competitor benefits, and there's a bit of a change in how the volume moves around. But from a Tesco perspective, they're kind of seeing the same amount of turnover. So how is your product going to come into the category and not just steal sales? How is it going to bring other people into the category? That's also very important to think about. And then the last two, so average selling price, again, understanding where your product sits in the sort of like, is it going to be an affordable product? Is it going to be more premium? Where is it going to sit in the scale? So average selling price, of course, price is at the discretion always of the retailer in the UK, but you can set a recommended retail price, and you can also think about promotional strategies as well. How are you going to promote? You're going to do price cuts, are you going to fund multi-buys? Thinking about that as well. And then the very last point, margin. When you list a product, one of the things that you will want to negotiate and have an idea about is what is a sustainable margin that you can give to the retailer, which puts you in a position to grow your business, but also satisfies Tesco's need to have a product which is obviously going to turn a profit for them as well. So that's the kind of thing that we look for.
Cool. So now we've done all the prep, it's time to start preparing for the presentation. And these are the steps that we go in to build the story. The reason why I refer to it as a story is because if people believe it, they're more likely to buy in and hopefully list the product. So first step of that is about summarizing the situation. You identify a problem that your product will go on to solve, but for now we're just identifying, setting the scene. And this is essentially the hook, which takes us to step 2. You introduce your product. Yeah. Introduce the idea of the product. Keep it very short and snappy. So these unique selling points in a sentence, how would you define the product? Here, you introduce it. Takes us to step 3. You add in all the information. So all the stuff that Waz just went through, you now give them all of that info. So that's from the financials, the marketing, the recommended selling price. This is essentially where you give them the bulk of the information, but this you're already prepared for, so you're ready. And then it goes to step 4, so reinforcing the key benefits. So if they were to only remember 3 things, because buyers are very busy, so they don't even mean to, but they will forget things. So if there was 3 things that you want them to take away from the session, out of everything you told them, what would those 3 things be? You summarize it there, which takes you to the last point, which is arguably the hardest point to actually get to, but you want to be able to actually define the next steps before you leave that meeting, because you don't want to come out of the meeting and not know what's next. Like, you might have a great meeting, but you haven't defined those next steps. So this is the key part to actually make sure you get here, because some people are just so happy to share all the information but don't actually get to this final step, is to define those elements of what you do next. If there's even follow-ups, is there another meeting that needs to happen? If it's a listing, when? Like, you need to make sure that that is actually defined before you end the session. So overall, if you go through these 5 steps, you build that final story, and you would have ultimately, I didn't actually say, solved the problem that you identified in the beginning by introducing your product as well.
Brilliant. So And then on to the final bit. So how do we manage the portfolio? So you've got a product listed in a retailer. What do you do to keep that product listed? Because that's just the start of the journey. You know, so you've done all that preparation. You've managed to convince the retailer to list the product. Then we have a function called category management, essentially, which is responsible for tracking the performance of that product and making sure it's essentially a feedback loop to make sure it maintains its performance. So 5 different steps to it. And I've just put here, I think data is vital, and we're obsessed with data in providing the context and the frame reference for your product's actual or forecasted performance. So a lot of it is focused on data. So number 1, in terms of category understanding. So I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but it's what I spoke about earlier. It's understanding the category and how that's also moving along with your product. For example, your product's in a category. If there's macro things which are impacting that category, which are, you know, whether that category is growing or shrinking, if you maintain your share in that category, that's going to also impact your absolute size of sales as well. So being aware of that is very, very important. And then looking at performance, I just want to talk about data and providers. So we look at EPOS data, so electronic point of sale data. There's several providers out there. I put some of the big ones on here, but there are also some smaller ones, which I think Tesco do mention in their presentation, which allow, like, it's more accessible for smaller businesses to buy that data, because you can appreciate that some of these can be quite expensive, but Nielsen, Circana, and SKUTrack are the ones that we use, which essentially aggregate data from electronic point of sale across the market, and then so you can see how your product's doing very, very easily in a simplified way. We also buy data from Kantar, which is a shopping panel. So people, there's 40,000 households across the UK which are part of this. They essentially scan in their receipts every week, and then Kantar take that data, and then they sort of visualize that data. So you can, and why that's interesting is you can start to track how shoppers are behaving over a set time. So one example is switching. So someone's buying your product, and they stop buying your product, they start buying a competitor. Kantar data will show you that X amount of people were buying your product in this period, but now they're not buying your product, they're buying a competitor's product. So you can then start to dig in, why is that? You know, have I done something? Have they done something? And how can I respond to that? So that data is also very, very useful alongside the electronic point of sale data. And then finally, just for that macro scale, there's several different portals out there which give you information about what's going on in the market reports. So Mintel is a great one, IGD, and also Euromonitor. These are also great because they give you things like category sizes, how categories are growing over time. So you know, if you're still in the early stages trying to think about what I want to do and where, it can really give you an idea of, is this category an attractive category to go into. And then in terms of then looking at the data and then how do we define our strategy, we also, I spoke a little bit about it earlier, but things like the assortment of products, your pricing and pack strategy, your promotional plan, and also things like the buyers all want your advice. When you're looking at a fixture and your product's going to be new in that fixture, where is it going to sit in that fixture? Is it going to be next to X product? Is it going to be next to Y product? Of course, you know, you want to be thinking about eye level is the most attractive level that, you know, there's also sort of where your product is defines how visible it is, essentially. So thinking about things like that and defining what your strategy on shelf is going to be is also very, very important. We often do store walks with the buyers as well, where we will walk around the store with them to see how that fixture is shoppable once the product is listed, and is there any changes that we can make to improve the performance. And then implementation. So I've put range reviews here. So when you're thinking about launching a product or making changes to a product, they typically have to align with things called range reviews, where retailers will have store hours booked, because if you think about a change to a shelf, if a retailer has 800 stores and you're changing a product from here to here, in 800 stores they're going to have to move that product from there to there, and that takes hours of people's time. So what supermarkets try to do is try and put that all together, so they'll try and make the changes together, and they'll typically do that once or twice a year. So you really want to know when that is, and so you can target those changes to that particular window. And then very lastly, bringing us back around is looking at when you make those changes, really tracking those changes, understanding I made that change, how does it compare to how does it compare to the post period, and we do a lot of that analysis and we present it back to the retailers as well. So you know, you made this change to the category, now you're performing better or worse, we think you should do this. And we have separate functions that do that on a sort of independent, neutral basis. Of course, they look at Heinz within that as well, but they look at the entire category, because the retailers won't just care about your product and your performance, they'll care about how the category is doing and how your product's contributing to that growth. So that's all from me. I'm going to hand it over to Vinay, who's going to talk about the finance side of things. In the interest of time, I'm sure some of you probably have questions, but if we have time at the end, we'll take them, but some of us will be around at lunchtime as well, so you can ask me, Sheridan, Rich, some questions on the material you've seen so far then. So, Vinay.
So, in the context of selling a product, there's a couple of elements you need to take into account, which we'll go through now. Just a show of hands, how many people have built a profit and loss statement before? So quite a few people, perfect. So in terms of the commercial cycle and the life of your product, I'll be taking you through the journey of kind of visualizing that. So you start with the shopper. You'll have a retail price of £75, and so that's how much you're going to sell it in store for. There'll be a net price, so that's how much the supplier sells it for. You'll have then the retailer profit, which is there at the bottom, so 15p. And then you'll have the unit cost, which is the cost of goods, and that's the amount that it costs the supplier to actually create the goods and ship it to the customer as well. So overall, the retail price was 75 pence, and the net price is 60p. The retailer profit would be 15p. And then if you look at it from an internal point of view, so from the person that's selling the goods, they would have sold it at 60p to the retailer, and it would have cost them 30p to actually produce that. So our profit would be 30p there. And so you can see there, you're here, you're the supplier. You're trying to get your product listed in a retailer, and we'll go into kind of how that looks from a P&L perspective, from an internal and an external P&L. So I'll just go through some of this. So I'll start down here, right at the bottom. If you're the supplier and you have calculated the cost of producing one unit, you know that your cost of goods is going to be 30p. And you know that you can sell it to your supplier for 60p. You've got your CMA margin, which is your contribution margin, or your profit. And this is how it would look like from an internal perspective. So assuming you sell 100 units, you would multiply that by the cost of selling one unit to your supplier, to the retailer. And you would have your net sales value. So you start up there. When you take away the cost of goods sold, you get down to your CMA, your contribution margin. So that's the starting point, taking into account your internal P&L. But you also need to think about your retailer P&L. So over here, if the retailer is selling at 75p in store and they sell 100 units, it's going to be £75. And then they're going to purchase that product off you for £60. So their retailer gross margin, or POR, is going to be £15. And there's a couple of things that you want to take into account. So from an internal perspective, an internal P&L perspective, is there something you can do different to drive more volume? Can you run any promotions? Can you fund any of those promotions? So if the normal price, or the RRP, in store is 75p, can you maybe suggest to the retailer, we can sell it at 70p, and we'll fund part of the 5 pence difference? And then in terms of COGS, are your COGS constantly changing? Obviously, the price of goods will change. For us, we sell baked beans, and one of the core ingredients is tomatoes. So we need to take into account how much the price of those goods will actually change over time, because that £30 there, or 30p, might not be the number in a year's time, for instance. And then in terms of driving financial efficiency and growth, there's a couple of pillars that we think about. So the first two pillars are very external focused. So you've got financial forecasting and tracking, and business insights and decision support. So in terms of financial forecast and tracking, you want to align your sales plan with your financial forecast. So knowing what price you're selling certain products at in a store, in which months and which promotional periods. You want to focus on your volume and mix and pricing and cost of goods. So again, what we spoke about before with the internal and external P&L. And then you want to track the rate of sales externally and internally. So what Waz mentioned earlier about looking at your EPOS data, so how many products you're selling in store and for how much you're selling it at. And then you obviously want to take into account the focus of the market and the category itself. And then in terms of business insights, so when we say insights, we mean more about understanding your numbers and making decisions based on that. So for example, you might run a promotion where we spoke about before, instead of selling it at 75p, you're going to sell a product at 70p. You need to understand and you need to analyze how much more volume you sold as a result of selling it at a cheaper cost. And all of those elements come together to really help support your decision making. And so we then got the other three, which are more internal focused. So month-end analysis and reporting. So this is something that's dear to my heart. I was in audit, and then I moved into what we call our trade investment team. And we're focused on making sure that at month-end we've got the correct financials in the system. We want to make sure that we've got the timely accruals and journal entries, so making sure your bookkeeping is really up to scratch. And you want to provide insights into cash flow and cash flow trends. So a very important element of any company, small or large, is your cash flow. It's good, of course, selling your products, but are you getting paid on time by your suppliers and by your retailers? And are you paying your suppliers on time as well? That's a very, very important element. And then we'll move on to continuous improvement. So again, looking at the category, constantly analyzing the data you have, your EPOS data, how much volume you're driving. You want to keep track of that just to ensure that you know that you're still performing well within a category, and you want to know that you can drive efficiency and gains through collaboration with the retailer and understanding really what the customer wants. And then alignment with company values. So again, selling a product is good, but are you aware of what your company values are? And when you run promotions and when you sell certain products, are they in line with your personal values as well? And obviously you want to contribute to your company's vision and ensure that ethical considerations are integrated into your financial decision making to make sure that you don't have any financial issues down the line. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So yeah, this is the last part, and I'm going to talk you guys through social media marketing. And yeah, basically a kind of step-by-step guide on how you can launch your product on social media. We'll do a show of hands just to keep the theme going. Does anyone have social media for their product? Cool, nice, perfect. And everyone has social media here, right? Of course. So yeah, I'm breaking it down into 5 steps today. So to start, why social media marketing is important. So I've got 4 key points here as to why it's really important to have some content of your product on social media. So the first is driving awareness. So any share-worthy content creates awareness for your brand, whether that's a pack shot or community management if you're engaging with other brands. Any content surrounding your product on socials is share-worthy and it's driving awareness. Second, talkability. So the content drives results from search engine optimization. If you can get people talking about your products on social media, there's a high chance they'll put that into a search engine, maybe learn more, maybe give you a follow. And all of that leads up to driving search engine optimization. So people will be sharing your product more on socials, they'll be talking about it more and searching it more. Thirdly, appealing to your target audience. So The content that you put out drives purchases and increases conversions. So if your target audience is a younger demographic and you're sharing content around your product, you know, it's appealing to that specific target audience, and I'll get into how you can appeal to that specific target audience if you have one. But either way, it all leads up to increasing conversion rates from them seeing your product, maybe liking it, to purchasing. And then finally, using call to actions and engaging with your audience. So if you're engaging back with your audience, you're highly likely to get some user-generated content. Maybe they'll share it on their own channels. Maybe they'll send it to their friend. Either way, it drives conversion as well as purchases. So understanding your audience and applying it to your brand. So each channel serves a different purpose. So we know that users spend at least 1/3 of their time on the internet on social media. I think we're all guilty of this, you know, doom scrolling at night, you know, brands come up on your feed and your algorithm every single day, whether you realize it or not. And 50% of Gen Z, I know it's terrible, 44% of millennials and 37% of Gen Z use social media on a daily basis. So that's every single day we're being exposed to content from everywhere. And the top 3 social media platforms used by Gen Z are Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, and then also Instagram. And visual content has 40% more shareability on social media. So we can already see that this is such an opportunity, you know, to be sharing content, because it's going to be exposed to like 50% of Gen Z on social media daily. You know, you want to get your product out onto, you know, millennials, Gen Z, whoever your target audience is. Social media is becoming such a high channel to get your product out there. So many channels to choose from. And there's 3 main points for choosing platforms to launch your product on. So firstly, who's your target audience? There's a lot of social media channels out there now, but it's really important to understand what demographic uses each channel. So if your product is focused more to Gen Z, you might want to use a channel that's more active for Gen Z. What's the message being conveyed? So are you driving conversion? Are you you know, do you just want to get involved on social media and put your product out there? What's the message that you want to convey to them? Which is really important in choosing your platform, because if it's visual content, you might want to use a photo or video-based app. Or if it's more informative, you might want to use a text-based app like X or Facebook. And then what type of asset sits in each channel. So again, if you're using video long form, maybe you want to go by YouTube. Again, if it's text, maybe X or Facebook. So I've broken down a deep dive into the 4 main channels that we use at Heinz. So TikTok, Instagram, X, and Facebook. And again, this is understanding our audience. So from a Heinz point of view, you know, our main focus is keeping our loyal customers. So we use X and Facebook for that. And then we also want to reach a younger audience and, you know, keep that brand awareness for the younger Gen Z audience. So we're now active on TikTok and also Instagram. So TikTok is demographic 18 to 29 years, and the content type is short and long video form. So here, for example, for Heinz, you know, we'll use long and short video forms of our new products. Maybe it will be a reactive content. You know, we'll just be hopping onto a trend. For example, if there's trending sound and we think we can tap into it, we'll produce some videos on there. Instagram, 18 to 29 years. So photo and video form obviously is the key asset you want to be putting on Instagram, so making sure you have a nice shot of your product, or maybe a short video for Reels, as that's a new video form that you can use on Instagram now. X and Facebook are a slightly older demographic, so 30 to 39, up to 50 and 59. And these are more text-based, so you can have photos and videos on Facebook, of course, but it's also very text-based, so we'll post conversation starters to engage with our audience. So on X, we'll post something like, what's something really random that you put ketchup on? And people will be in the comments, you know, they'll be talking about our brand. It's just a simple question, but it drives talkability, and we can respond to them, we can have a conversation with them, and it's kind of just staying connected to our audience and our customers. So thirdly, being organized. This is something that is I didn't even realize this was such a thing, but creating a social media calendar is so helpful if you're going to be on multiple channels. It can be really easy to lose track of the content that you're putting out there, and it can also be quite hard to split that into the different channels. If you are using different channels, it's very tempting to put the same thing on all platforms. But if you just keep in mind that there's a different audience for each one, it can be hard to keep track of all the content you want to put out. So having a calendar where you split it, it's a normal calendar, it's got the days and your channels, and if you just put in every day the content that you're putting out there, you can easily track it, and you can also go back and see how much content did you put out last month compared to this month? Should you be putting out more? Should you maybe be putting out less? It's a really great way to identify gaps in your calendar and also identify opportunities. So creating culturally relevant content. So from launching your product, there's kind of two key points on social media that at Heinz we go by. So pre-launch and launch. So pre-launch is a great way to put your product out there and build anticipation and excitement. For us, this includes teaser posts, story countdowns, and mystery giveaways. So these three are great ways to kind of get your audience excited about the product that you're launching, whether it can be anything, but it's a great way to build that anticipation, post a story countdown, there's a new product in 3 months, like follow us to stay tuned. It's a great way to drive awareness and engagement. And then launch, some key points for a launch post. So leading with a benefit-focused headline. So what's the product that you're launching? How are you going to grab their attention? Highlight the value provided in the offer. So what kind of product is it? What's the benefit they'll gain out of it? Use a compelling and concise copy. So copy is essentially the caption, the text that you put under your post. So and I'll show an example for Heinz in a bit, but using a really compelling, concise copy is a great way to grab attention. We're exposed to so many posts throughout the day. We scroll at like the speed of lightning now, it seems. So, you really want to get their attention. So bold text, something's coming, build that anticipation is a great way to kind of stop people in their tracks when they're scrolling. And then choosing a high quality image that showcases the offering. So Canva is an amazing tool for this. There's so many free online tools you can utilize, that even we utilize, because they're just so easy to use, and you can create a really nice launch post in a short amount of time. So I've chosen Barbie coincidentally. This is not a promo for barbecue sauce. This is such a coincidence. But yeah, this is our pre-launch that we did for barbecue sauce. So we posted a bottle with, we've dropped a new sauce tomorrow. Any guesses? What flavor is it going to be? And this is, again, community management. So we got loads of comments. People guessed it correctly there, but some people didn't guess it correctly. And we kind of engaged with them. We replied to the comments, liked the comments. If people are commenting on a brand's post, it's a really nice way. It takes 2 seconds to just reply to some comments, maybe like them. It's a great way to kind of engage back with them and also drive them to continue liking and engaging with your content. And we also turned our logos pink without any explanation as to why, which also drove quite a lot of excitement. And people, were throwing guesses around, and it's a great way, to engage with them before our product was even on social media. And then, so our launch post, we have an in-house studio, but this content, clear eye-catching content is probably the key takeaway from this. So nice lighting and a nice camera, depending on what your product is, just making sure it's a really high-quality image that really showcases your offering. And then, again, here, copy. So, introducing in capital letters, making a really nice headline just through utilizing emojis and the captions. It grabs users' attentions, and it leads, with a benefit-focused headline. And then some compelling, concise copy. So you asked, we listened. We're bringing you a barbecue limited edition barbecue sauce. And then finally, a clear call to action. So you want to put at the end where it's available, where they can grab it, when it's launching. At the bottom, you want to have a clear call to action, depending on what you want your users to get out of it. So fifth, tracking performance and adjusting as you go. Oh, that slide's not updated. But there's 3 key indicators to measuring success. So impressions, engagement, and reach. So your impressions are the number of times your content is displayed to users on screen. And you can find this in the settings of the majority of social media platforms. And it will give you a number. So the impressions is the number of times that post is on people's screens. So whether they scroll past it or whether they don't look at it, the impressions is the total amount of times it comes up. Engagements is kind of the real key element here that you want to look at, and it's the number of times a user engages or reacts to your post. So that's a like, comment, or a share. And this is really useful because you can see how often, if you put something out and it's a launch post and the engagement is really high, and then, you kind of test a different type of content and the engagement is low, you can really drive, you can find conclusions, what's working for your channel and what's not, what do your audience like and what do they, not really respond well to. And from there, you can kind of plan your content and really see what your users would like to see from your page. And then reach, you might have to write this down because it's not on the slide, but it's the amount of times that your content is displayed on screen. So whether it's different to impressions because it doesn't measure whether people look at it or not. It's kind of like a social media metric, so how many times it's on pages. So if it's on the Explore page, that counts as a reach, but it doesn't really calculate whether someone's looked at it. But it's a great way to see how often your content is being shared, because if it's present on a lot of different pages or it's kind of showing up on people's algorithm, it's a great way, again, to see what's working and what's not. And it's a lot of trial and error. So after a month of posting content, you can look at the engagements, you can see what worked, what didn't work, and you can plan your content for the next month. So yeah, in-app tools are your best friend. These are free. If you have an Instagram, does everyone have an Instagram account? Yeah. So if you go into your settings, or you can change your profile to a business account, and it gives you some free tools where you can see impressions and engagement of each post in-app. So it's a really good tool. And yeah, tracking them per month can help you understand how to plan your content for the future. So yeah, I'll leave you with 5 key tips for growing your platform. So whether you've just made one now or you've had it for a year, these are some 5 key tips. So planning your content strategy and choosing goals that align with your business objectives. So what is the objective? Do you want to drive awareness? Do you want to connect with your customers? Depending on what it is, you can plan your content accordingly. Secondly, reach. So to increase the reach of your content, target those audience segments. So is your product specifically for Gen Z? Get on TikTok and Instagram. Is it for millennials? And for an older audience, be more active on Facebook and X. Act, so encourage interaction and participation with your own blogs and sites and social outposts. And here, giveaways are a great driver. So if you want your users to engage, with your social media more, giveaways are a great way to do this and a great way to get users to act. We all know that scrolling through our social media, we don't really want to interact with so many brands, but if they're offering, hey, like this and comment, and you'll be entered into a draw where you can win one of these, it drives likes and comments way more. So it's a great way to, share, get your content out there and get it sharing. It's a great way to get users to act. And then convert, so making the transition from customer brand engagement with social media to generating more leads and sales. We find that a human approach to social media is really great for this. I've put here, think Duolingo. Has everyone seen Duolingo's social media? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But they have a very human approach to social media, so they're interacting with their audience a lot. They kind of react to people's comments, they reply, they have a very human approach. And this is just an example. It's not, a staple that you have to have, but it's just an example of how you can have that human approach. So engaging with comments, engaging with likes, responding to DMs if people have questions, you should really stay active and check those inboxes, because it's a great way for them to say, okay, hey, they really care, or yeah, it's just a nice way to engage with them. And then keep those communications with consumers going and follow similar businesses to stay connected. So if there's another business that are promoting a similar product to you, maybe reach out to them and say, hey, let's do a collab post. Let's give away one each of our products. It's a great way to share those audiences. So if you're on their post, some of their followers might say, oh, okay, what's this product? And they'll go onto your page. It's a great way to just drive awareness and get yourself out there. So definitely connect with other businesses on social media. Again, giveaways or collab posts are a great way to do that. And yeah, just have fun with it. And it's a lot of trial and error. See what works, see what doesn't. But yeah, stay active on there. Find out what your strategy is, and then choose those channels and go from there. But yeah, that's all from me and us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaya. That content was fantastic. Apologies for not introducing you at the beginning. That's my fault. Did anyone notice the difference between the marketing slides and the sales and finance slides? Yeah. I think we've got a bit to learn there. Yeah, thank you. Hopefully that was helpful. We try and kind of pitch the content at a level which is accessible and kind of hopefully helpful for people at different stages in their journeys. Probably the best part of the previous masterclasses that we've done has been kind of the interaction and the Q&A. So we've got 15 minutes left, roughly, in terms of the time that we have, and we'd love to kind of take any questions and see if we can help at all. But yeah, please open the floor.
I can see a hand.
Start with this lady here.
Hi, thank you so much. That was so amazing. I wanted to just ask, because you made a really good point, and I saw this recently with a fellow competitor stroke friend that had a patty in the supermarket and they sold out like in 2 days. So manufacturing is clearly going to be the only way a small business would be able to meet the demands of a large kind of supplier. How do small businesses get manufacturers?
I mean, it's a great question. I'm not sure how qualified I am to answer it accurately or informatively. I think what I would say is, and maybe the Tesco people here might help you also with like how they would respond to that situation. I think really drilling into like the scale that you can achieve, and then looking upstream and thinking about, does your manufacturing base have the capability to do that? In some cases, for ourselves, we don't always have the capability to manufacture every single product that we actually sell. So we look at co-packing, and I think it just takes time and research to understand the co-packing and the manufacturing landscape to see if you can find the right provider to be able to give you that scale ultimately. In terms of how you do that, I think it's probably quite a lot of legwork in terms of industry networking and so on and so forth, and yeah, looking at the kind of manufacturing landscape to see who can provide that for you is probably the best advice that I can give you, but it is quite critical, as you say, to make sure that you've got that. I think as you go further down the track, it would be probably a conversation with a business like NatWest about how they could finance you to create your own platform. But I don't know if anyone else has got any builds on that.
Just a very simple response is cash flow is the most important thing, I think, for a business. So what I mentioned earlier, that if there's anything to take away from the finance slides, cash flow is the most important thing. So making sure you're getting paid in time and making sure you're paying your suppliers on time.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Anyone else?
Thank you for the presentation, absolutely amazing. My first question is, I work with a lot of businesses who have their own different types of food, that sources and different things like that. Does Heinz have a process for new businesses to pitch their new sources to you to do joint ventures or partnerships? I know, bad boy question, I know, right?
I don't think we have a process per se. We, as a branded kind of house, if you want to call it that, we obviously focus on our own intellectual property and the value that we can create through that. That said, we have recently done a collaboration with Morley's on a spicy chicken sauce, which was, I think they approached us through our social media channels, as far as I'm aware, and that got a conversation going. And that then has now manifested itself into some joint marketing and joint production, I guess, collaboration. And we're now actually putting that product into supermarkets to sell it. So I don't think we've ever done that before, frankly, and so therefore we don't have necessarily a set process. But I think, and actually going back to your question as well, LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for this because it can connect the right stakeholders to start those kinds of conversations. So that's probably what I would encourage anyone to do, is to connect with Heinz stakeholders through that forum.
So who would be the right stakeholder for a small organisation to get in touch with?
Well, I mean, I'd like to say that, people like ourselves, if someone comes to us and makes contact with us, we would then feed that through into the right channels. Fantastic. We in Heinz have a platform that we call New Ventures, which is essentially a business unit within our overall kind of structure, which focuses on innovation and new products that we're bringing to market. Within that, we have various platform leads that sit across different kind of category like product portfolios. So you can find those people on LinkedIn and then approach them, I think, through LinkedIn, and they will respond, I think, to you on that basis. But all of us are available to kind of be conduits for those kinds of conversations.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to be cheeky. I got one more quick question, right? What is the process that you use to get product market fit for your new products? So you had the barbecue. Like, I'm not gonna lie, until I saw the slide, it actually clicked. What you meant, like actually Barbie. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking, yeah, barbecues. No, I got it. But what is the actual process that you use to get product market fit for your new products? Because I know small businesses, when they're looking to achieve product market fit, they go through around the houses. But as a more established big business, what is your structure and your process that you use to get product market fit?
I'm going to ask Waz to answer that question.
Yeah, so I can talk. I mean, I'll give you an example. We're constantly, I think, monitoring, through some of the channels that Kate was talking about as well, social media, what people are talking about, but also through the Kantar channel, you can also see what people are eating and what people are eating our products with, and typically what they're adding to our products. So those kind of things really give you an insight about what are people doing with our products which we aren't offering people. So I think an example of this is beans. Beans are very commonly sort of eaten, and we got two insights on this. One, for example, cheese and beans is a very, very popular combination, probably one of the most popular combinations. And we didn't have a product in the market that addressed that. So we have recently collaborated, actually linking to your previous question, with Cathedral City. So Cathedral City, obviously the biggest brand in the UK that makes cheese. So we now have a product which is co-branded with them, which already has the cheese built into the sauce in the beans. And we've put that in the market to sort of tackle that because we had that insight that people are doing that. Another example with beans as well is, from my own background as well, so I grew up eating beans, but my gran would add like garam masala and spices and green chilies to the beans. So I grew up eating masala beans, which are delicious, right? And now actually Dishoom do masala beans, and they're getting quite trendy. So it's something that we hadn't tapped into. So we've recently launched like Vindaloo, tikka, and jalfrezi beans as well, with spice mixes, which we know are already doing that, right? So for an established business, we're trying to keep relevant and sort of trying to also tap into areas that we haven't sort of tapped into with our core products, where we, as Rich said earlier, have a right to play. So it's not something that's completely left field, but something that products can sort of tap into.
So you're very much data-led before you try anything else?
As much as we can be, yes.
I think just to build on that point, it's like, would a customer expect to find a Heinz product in that location in a shop kind of thing? That's almost the mentality, that sort of where to play kind of piece is, like, would you assume that a customer would say, okay, a Heinz product actually doesn't look out of place in this space, and so therefore there's that affinity, which probably gives us confidence that we can then grow some sales in that space, ultimately.
Sorry, another question. Food is, I've heard you can't patent food, so recipes, etc. When you're gonna outsource your production, you have to obviously sign NDAs, etc., etc. There's no real protection in reality, because somebody could just change 2 grams and say, "Oh, it's a different recipe, love, sorry." Is that just the way it is or is you have to just take that risk?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's not really my area of expertise, if I'm honest with you, but I think for some of our kind of signature products, we hold the intellectual property for the recipe, and frankly, only a very few people on the planet know what the kind of specifics of those recipes are. I think, it's only a very tiny fragment of our kind of portfolio that does go into external manufacturing, but in that case, we have very strong kind of legal agreements with those manufacturers. And for us, so I suppose we benefit from the luxury of our intellectual property, which kind of sits on the pack and consumers recognise that. But I think in a case where you don't have that, it's about having a real high level of trust with that manufacturer, I would say.
Hello, I have a question. So the lady that spoke about pitching, how would you go about reaching out to buyers or those who you want to pitch your brand and specifically your products to? As well, and I also have a question for the social media lady, or the marketing lady, sorry, around how often do you post online, or how often should you be sharing content on some of these on your chosen platform regularly? Or, you know, someone said 8 times a day on X, so how often do you do that to be, listen, yeah, to get that, so.
Do you want to take? Yeah. I'll start with the pitching element and how to actually reach out to buyers. I think a lot of them now, the big retailers have programs, which is probably the easiest way to get in touch with them and to get in front of them. But I heard a story of a retailer that was a supplier that was essentially waiting outside some of the offices. Don't think it's the best thing to do, but you sometimes have to be very active to try and get in touch with the buyers. Also use the resources that you can have, like that are available, like LinkedIn. Who can you reach out to on those platforms as well? But yeah, I found that some of the incubator programs have been the key way that I've heard people get into the industry, essentially. But yeah, I think it is a challenging environment. And I think we kind of have the privilege of kind of being able to go in front of them without that. So I admire anyone who actually gets in front of a buyer without the big brand name.
It's a good question to ask the Tesco team.
Yeah, I'll say that. How do you get in front of them?
Yeah, so in terms of posting frequency, we definitely don't post 8 times a day. I don't think we will, but we usually go off about 3 times a week on our channels, Instagram and TikTok, you know, just to stay kind of relevant and in conversations. But it's definitely also surrounding, you know, cultural holidays and calendar moments. So we find that now it's bank holiday, so we're thinking, okay, what can we post for bank holiday? You know, people are going to be outside. Maybe it's going to be like a recipe, like sandwiches. You know, for Christmas, usually we schedule things for recipes building up, and then, you know, we'll post something on the day. So I'd say the first tip is to like look at calendar moments and like how you can get involved in conversations that are surrounding online. As a benchmark for in general, we find that posting 3 to 4 times a week on our main channels works, but we also have conversation starters, so it's like a filler. So whenever, you know, it's a quieter week on social media, we don't have a product launch, instead of kind of like posting for the sake of it, we'll kind of get together and think, okay, how can we still be active on socials this week? So we'll post something on X saying, what are you guys eating this week? You know, we'll have some comments, we'll engage with them, or if not, you know, yeah, 3 times a week is kind of our benchmark. We don't really like to have our content calendar kind of like empty for more than a few days running. But yeah, it's definitely a tip is to like look at cultural moments and calendar holidays to kind of see how you can fill up those days and the kind of content you can post, so that it's not posting for the sake of it. But yeah, hope that helps.
We've got space for one more question, I think.
Someone choose.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one question? As a big organisation, how do you deal with crisis comms in regards to social media? Example, when the Queen passed away, how quickly do you pivot, change, messaging, things like that?
So whenever there's like kind of a big moment like that, we kind of like group, and we with like the social media team, we kind of think, okay, how are we going to act on it? And then we go from there. We try to, sorry, did you mean like whenever there's like an event, like you said, like
you've got your scheduled posts and then something emergency comes up.
Yeah, so whenever we have kind of scheduled content, but so there's something going on, for example, when the Queen died, we jumped on that very quickly. So we did have content scheduled, but in the morning when we got the news, so we have a lot of social listening channels. So for example, in the morning, I'll do like a sweep of social media, like see kind of like what's going on. And if there is a big crisis like that, we usually kind of regroup together with like the comms team and kind of align on how we're going to move forward. You know, are we going to kind of clear the content for the day? For example, when recently Kate Middleton, that announcement that she was quite ill, we had some content scheduled, but you know, we kind of just shifted it to the next week, just so that, you know, we weren't kind of posting content when there's a crisis. So it is definitely something that you have to be quick with, and we have our team we regroup every morning and have a sweep through channels. And if there is something, you know, there's a crisis or we should, you know, be a bit quieter that day, we kind of regroup in the morning and share what we found and move from there.
Hi, this is another question again with the socials. So do you manually do all your posts, or do you use a scheduling platform? And if so, which one do you use? Do you use that Klaviyo or anything like that?
Yeah.
And also, how far in advance do you plan your posts for the rest of the year?
That's a great question. So we actually split it. So we use a social media poster called Sprout Social. It's a great tool where you can schedule content and also build reports and see, engagements, impressions, and things. We use that for all of our social content, but for TikTok and Instagram Reels, we post it through mobile, just because if we want to add in text features or we want to duet with another company, Sprout Social doesn't offer those features. So I'll have to go in, accept it on the DM. There's some features that you still have to do in-app. So we kind of split it through that, but we schedule all our content on Sprout. We usually go through the content calendar that I was mentioning at the start of the week, and we schedule everything we can for the week, leaving out, for example, TikTok, or if we have assets that we want to post through mobile in-app. And we usually, through planning that content, we have briefs for each month. So for example, now we're looking at our June brief. So we're thinking, okay, so what new products are launching in June? What are we going to need to post on social media? We'll connect with that brand team and kind of align on what content they want to put out. So for example, for Barbie, that was a May kind of new product launch. So we put that in the brief for April, and we usually start that about a month before. Only for Heinz, because we have quite a lot of content. So if there's a few new product launches, we need to schedule it so they don't clash and they don't kind of cannibalize each other. So we do work on that brief about a month in advance to kind of schedule the content so that we leave enough time for our own reactive content, but we're also posting new products and making sure they're not too close to each other. So we kind of start that a month before. But it depends on the frequency of the content and how much you have to plan and schedule.
Is that even for key holidays, for example,
Yeah.
Halloween?
Yeah. So for example, so that would be something that we pick up on a month before when we're going through the month's brief. We'll say, okay, for our October brief, we know we've got Halloween, what we're going to do for it, and we'll start thinking about that a month ahead.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Heinz.